Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Critting Your Role, an actor's guide to role playing. Like I have been saying for the past two videos, these videos themselves follow kind of a formula. Um, I generally record them in threes. I haven't been able to the last 3 weeks due to some mental health problems. So this one's coming out a little bit late, and I apologize. But I'm still sticking to the three theme, which is I do one about something physical involving your body somehow. I do one vocally involving some use of your voice. And then I do one about what I call acting theory, um, which is the stuff you learn when you actually take acting courses and things like that, or if you're in a show with a really good director or with other really good actors, you will learn kind of the art behind acting. These are the things that change acting from just reading words on a page to an actual art form. So I'm going to stick with that for this. And so far in the acting theory, we have talked about pronoun usage, specifically referring to your character as I or me, using personal pronouns, whatever personal pronouns you prefer, to uh, get yourself in the mindset of, well, no, right now I'm playing a character. I'm not me, I am this character. And so by just changing those pronouns, it helps, change your mindset and helps you to really get into character. And then we talked about the system, which is significantly more complicated than I made it. We basically boiled it down to the idea of what would I do were I that person in that situation? And those are what are called internal characterization or character development theories or practices. And what is meant by that is they come from an internal source and then move their way outward. You dictate your physical aspects, like how you hold yourself, where you locate your voice, and things like that, based on internal motivations. And that, for me personally, is the most common way for me to create a character. I'm a very internalized actor. That's how I like to do it. However, again, I actually went to college for 2 years as a theater major with an emphasis in acting, and have been acting for, I don't know, I've done roughly like 2.5 dozen shows, something like that. So I did a lot of acting, and one of the things that you learn very quickly is there are some roles that your most comfortable way of creating a character will not work. It could be that you don't have again, for an internalized actor like myself, it could be that you simply don't have uh, a way to reference that mentally. There is no way for you to put them yourself in their shoes from a mental perspective, simply because you've never actually been in their shoes. You have no frame of reference. You have no way to figure out how to do that. So it could be a bunch of other things. But for me, that's the most common reason why I won't use the system, or I'll change up how I create my characters and make them fully realized and three-dimensional and things like that. And so what we're going to talk about today, again, is me taking very, very broad strokes to explain an extremely complicated and varied process in a very, very simplified way, because that's the whole point of this show, is not to turn you guys into full-blown, Shakespearean actors, or get you guys, an Oscar or anything like that. These are simple tips that you can use at your own table to improve your role playing ability, to make your game just that little bit better, to help you to enjoy it more, to help the other players at the table get into it more. That's the whole purpose of this show. Is it's just so you can role play better. So understand what I'm about to talk about is an incredibly complicated subject. There are entire college courses that take 6 months to get through that cover only one aspect of what I'm about to talk about. And even then, they're just teaching the basics of it. There are actors that spend, and in this particular instance, dancers and fight choreographers and a lot of other people in the entertainment industry that spend their entire careers studying this. So please understand, if this is something that interests you, there is a crap ton more information about it. And if you guys do want me to talk in more specifics about some of the techniques I mentioned here, we may go into that in a later Critting Your Role. But as of right now, again, I want to focus on just really simple, basic things that literally anyone can do with very little practice. What I want to talk about today is what's called external characterization, where your physical aspects, things from the outside of your character, are what define your character. And I'm going to talk about two that I actually studied, and then list some specifics that you can actually use at your table at home. So the two that I actually studied were called, it's broadly called movement work, which is basically exploring your character by, having a large empty space and just kind of moving around in it and expressing your character through movement. Some might refer to this kind of like interpretive dance or something like that. It's a very interesting way to create a character because so much of conversation and communicating meaning and things like that is done non-verbally. However, so much of what we think about is verbal. We're a verbal culture. Everything is communicated with words and thoughts and ideas, and people spend their entire lives studying our language and wording and things like that. And so even the internalized acting methods I've mentioned before are all about using words and things like that to find motivations that give your character the ability to take actions. It's all very verbal. Movement practicing is basically taking the verbal aspects completely out of it. And it's not trying to replace words with movements that mean words. Like it's not turning your character mute and then learning sign language or attempting to mime what you want to do. This is literally trying to express emotions, feelings, motivations through movement, through expression, through just physical aspects. Not miming to try and get people to guess words. It's not charades. And it's also not really something you can do sitting down. So as far as applications for doing it physically at the table, it's not something you're really going to do. However, a lot of acting is prep work. A lot of DMing is prep work. And if you are having a hard time getting in touch with your character, getting into a large open space where you can just walk around, and generally you want to have some sort of a soft surface, whether it's, padding on the floor or doing it, in a grass field or something like that, just so you have the freedom to do things like fall down or crawl or something like that. These are all ways to express yourself, express emotions and things like that, like, curling yourself up into a ball and then crawling on the floor. Is a great way to kind of express how a character might be feeling in a specific situation where they feel like they've been belittled, or they feel like they are in a position where they have to shrink back and they're afraid. And so you might do that physically to just kind of get that feeling of what it feels like to really, contort yourself into a small space, or crawl along the ground, or fall, or roll, or run, or jump, or anything like that. Again, it's not something you can really do at the table, but it is a really interesting and very, very different way to create the character. Because instead of starting with, okay, this is the feeling, you start externally. Okay, this is the way the character stands. I've decided that this is the way the character stands, and I'm just going to spend the next 5 minutes walking around the way that I think the character would walk. And then we just do that. And then, okay, something happens. The character gets hit by something, and so pain I'm going to experience. And it's all, I call it, this kind of like floofy, artistic stuff that some people really don't like. But as an actor, as an artist, it is an important tool in my toolbox. I don't use it often, but it can be somewhat useful. A variation on movement studies, which again, movement studies is very, very broad, and in general, you have to be willing to look like kind of an idiot because you're going to do weird things. You're going to like spread your arms and flap them, or you're going to jump into the air and then land, on your back, or, things like this, weird stuff that you would never do, or you're going to contort yourself. The other method that I learned in college is called animal studies. And this is a very intellectual form of externally creating a character. And basically what that is you look at the character and you kind of analyze the character itself. This is the character. These are, this is what the character does. This is, how it acts, blah, 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 blah. And by analyzing the character, you make comparisons to an animal. It could be a bear, it could be a panther, a raccoon, a cat, any animal in the world, a bee, any creature in the world you can see. You can go, you know what? These specific things remind me of a bear, or these specific things remind me of a weasel, or anything like that. And then what you do is you throw away the character for a little bit, and you focus on physically becoming that creature. When I did it in college, the character that I was portraying, it was a monologue. It's actually one of the monologues that I kept for auditions for years because it was a comedic monologue that I really, really enjoyed, and involved me talking to a person that wasn't there, that actually moved around the room and things like that. And so it was a really good example of me being able to interact with, characters that aren't there and have these real emotional connections and things. It's a good thing for auditions. It was a great audition piece. But the character himself, the whole point of the monologue is he slept with his best friend's girlfriend, and through the monologue, he tries to justify himself. And he tries to repair the relationship he used to have with his best friend. And by the very end, after exhausting everything else and trying all this logic and everything like that, and saying, well, you did this, and therefore I had no choice, but blah, 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 he finally goes, you know what, I'm sorry. And by that point, it's too late, and his friend has walked out the door. So it's this really cool comedic monologue that has a really touching moment at the end. It's fun. But looking at the character, I decided this was a problem solver. That was the kind of person this guy was. He looked at a situation and just started coming up with solutions, and would keep trying solutions until he came up with one. And if you've never actually met a raccoon, you may not quite understand this, but raccoons are problem solvers. They really are. They're incredibly intelligent creatures. They can do things like they can get into closed garbage bins, and they can break into, like, they can learn how to open doors and stuff like that. Like, they're really, really smart creatures. And so I decided that this character was most like a raccoon. And then I spent, I think it was like 2 weeks studying raccoons, looking at them, looking how they walk, looking how they interact with the world, trying to imitate the sounds that they make, which is very, very difficult for someone that has never done it before. This has been the first time I'd ever tried to imitate animal sounds, and raccoons, remarkably enough, sound really, really weird. You think of them like in movies and stuff with that kind of like chittering rodent type quality. They're not. They have this kind of kind of like grunting thing that they do. It's really weird, and they hiss, and so they're. It was weird, but basically, so I spent like 2 weeks where all I did was focus on making myself physically act like a raccoon, walking on all fours, feeling around and washing things with my hands because raccoons wash their food, which I think is one of the most interesting things about them. And other things, I think one of my favorite clips in the world is watching a raccoon get candy floss. What's it called? Cotton candy. That's what they call it in this country. That I should know first. He got a thing of cotton candy and was by a river, and so he tried washing the cotton candy, brings it up to eat it, and none of it's there because cotton candy dissolves in water instantly. It's gone. And it was just it was so sad and hilarious at the same time to watch just this like, what happened? Like you could see on the raccoon's face, like, where did it go? I had it. It was really funny. Anyway, so again, this is not something that you can really do at the table, despite the fact that Matt has done this. If you've ever seen Matt play Trinket, which he has done on multiple occasions, that is based in the idea of animal work. The entirety of the character is he is a bear. And so you start with being a bear, and you'll watch him get his paws out, and he'll and if you've ever seen a bear, he does a really good impression of a bear. Like it's remarkable how good he is at being a bear. And then works backwards into character motivations and things like that, taking into account his relationship with Vex and stuff like that. But that is animal work. Again, it's not the brunt of the work you're going to do if you are doing external motivated character development and character creation. The blunt of the work you're going to be doing is going to be done away from the table. Just because, again, the whole process of animal work is you start by fully becoming the animal. That is the entirety of your being. Your only purpose is you become the animal, and then you slowly work backwards from the animal to the character you're portraying. So, if your character is a bear, you slowly work. Bears walk on all fours. You slowly start walking upright, but you still have the lumbering gait of a bear. And then bears grunt and growl and things like that. Humans use actual speak. So you slowly work back from I'm gonna talk like this. And it's very deliberate, and every so often I yell. And things like that. And so that's animal work. Both of them, for me, were very uncomfortable when I first learned them because they were very outside my comfort zone. I didn't enjoy doing them at all, but they were incredibly enlightening as far as learning a new way to craft a character, learning more about my body itself and how it works, and the things that I can and can't do, and exactly how out of shape I was, because part of animal work is walking the exact way an animal does. And a lot of people don't realize things like cats walk on their tiptoes. They don't actually walk on the whole of their feet, and they definitely don't walk on their knees. So if you're truly doing animal work, you have to suspend yourself above the ground on your toes and on your fingertips and walk forward, normally anywhere from 6 inches to a foot off the ground. And it's very uncomfortable. It is incredibly taxing if you've never done it before. But you learn about muscles you've never used before because you've never put your body in that situation. And again, it can really help to create a very believable character. So yes, that is movement work and animal work, and these are things that you can't do physically at the table. Generally, you will not have enough time. But if you're in a slump, if you're bored, you want to try something new, create a character, and sit there and use movement to express what they feel. You know, they're a warlock and they are tethered to their patron via a pact. You know, so you are tethered, you are pulled. No matter what you do, you know, just have one arm that never moves, and no matter what you do, you can reach out or you can jump or anything, but this one arm is just stuck in place and you can't move it. You know, or you know, you're a ranger, as a hunter ranger, and they kind of stalk their prey, kind of like a panther. Become a panther. You know, go around your backyard on your tiptoes, on your toes and your fingertips, and prowl around for a little bit. Get that idea, and you may start noticing that when you're embodying this character, you start doing one of these, where your nose actually leads the rest of your face, because panthers track. They have, I believe, they have pretty good eyesight, but they track by smell. As do a lot of cats. They have a very good sense of smell, and so you may start noticing your character follows their nose a little bit more, and it'll look a little bit weird, but it'll be a very fully developed character, because again, you worked your way backwards from this animal. And yeah, so those are, again, what are called external ways to create a character. They require a little bit more work, a lot more time commitment than the other techniques that we've talked about. But even just doing them once for a character you never play will teach you so much about how to play a character, how to create a believable character, and just about how your body moves and reacts, and it'll help you to learn how to do new things. So anyway, that's this week's video. It's a little bit long, I'm sorry, but again, this is a massively complicated subject that I've condensed into two very basic principles that are a lot more complicated than they actually seem. So in the comments below, again, we've talked about changing pronouns, and we've talked about internalized motivations, what I refer to as the system, though it's a very basic version of it. You know, what would I do in that character's place if I had lived that character's life? That kind of idea. So in the comments below, what I'd like to know is, have you tried this? Have you tried just simply referring to your character as I instead of they? Or by your character's name? Have you just tried that, and has that changed how you view your characters? Because a lot of the other players at the table won't realize you're doing it, but you will, and it may change some thought processes. Have you started using that internalized motivation for your character to make decisions? Have you started doing things like that, where you're not going, well, mechanically I should do blah 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 and use this ability? Have you started going, well, you know, I was born here and I was raised here and I have this belief structure, and therefore, you know, I will feel like this, and that feeling will make me take this action. I'm really interested to know how the acting theory portions of this have gone. Beyond that, I do want to mention the next 3 episodes are actually all they're going to follow the same format, but they're all going to be along the same theme, which is warm-up. Generally, warm-up is the first thing that you learn when you were learning something new that could potentially be dangerous. I wanted to start with some things that are a little bit more interesting to get your guys' attention, but warming up is incredibly important. Massively important. It helps prevent you from straining muscles and hurting yourself and doing things like that. And even like the acting theory warm-ups can be incredibly useful, just to get your mind in a state where you can understand and it's in a pliable state for improvisation and thinking in a different way than it is generally than you generally think because you're playing a different character. So next week is all going to be about warm-ups, and I know it sounds boring, but it's incredibly essential. Even if you do not use it for role-playing at your table, I will guarantee the stuff that we talk about next week will be useful to you if you use your voice, if you use your body, or if you use your mind in whatever you do. I guarantee it. So please check out that stuff. Otherwise, again, you can follow me on Twitter, subscribe to me here on YouTube, comment and like, because that makes the algorithm work better so that more people can see the video and everything like that. Otherwise, that's all for me today. I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye-bye.